Thank you very much, General. I'd like to thank the INSS for inviting me to speak at this important conference. This is my 5th visit to Israel. It's a pleasure to be back. It's always a pleasure to be back. The past few days, I've been in Jerusalem leading the American delegation as part of the annual U.S.-Israel Counterterrorism dialogue. And let me just say what a pleasure it was, what an honor it was to represent the United States in the capital of Israel. We've held this dialogue for nearly 25 years now, and it's a testament to our shared determination to confront the shared threats that we both face. When it comes to counterterrorism, the United States has no closer friend than Israel. I'm here to talk about CT, which is one of the highest priorities for President Trump and Secretary Tillerson. But it's worth taking a step back to reflect on the broader relationship between our two countries. In a time of continued turbulence across the Middle East, Israel is a beacon of stability, the most successful democracy in the region. It's also a beacon of prosperity. Israel has made itself into a leading center of technological innovation, with many top tech companies from the United States and around the world opening up shop here. And in a part of the world where the rights of women and minorities are often severely constrained, Israel stands out as a pluralistic and open society, all while maintaining continuity and faith with its Jewish identity. These shared values are the reason for the unbreakable friendship between the United States and Israel. We believe in democracy and self-government. We reward innovation. We're committed to individual rights, including the free exchange of ideas that is the hallmark of liberal democracy. We honor the right to dissent, and we know that men are not angels, as James Madison put it, and so we impose strict limits on government power. Our two countries don't just share common values. We also share common adversaries. That's not a coincidence. Part of the reason our enemies target us is precisely because of our open, liberal, and tolerant societies. Today, Israel confronts a number of threats right on its doorstep: an emboldened Iran and its terrorist partner Hezbollah, a resilient and determined Hamas, an ISIS branch in the Sinai. The President and the Secretary are committed to working hand in hand with our Israeli allies to tackle these challenges. So tonight, I'd like to briefly outline how the Trump administration views these threats and what we're doing to mitigate them, including several new actions that we'll be announcing tonight. Let's start with Iran. While ISIS has justifiably dominated the headlines in recent years, Iran has extended its malign influence across the region and around the world. Iran has played a key role in Syria, where the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has helped prop up the brutal Assad regime throughout the bloody civil war. The IRGC has also backed the Houthi rebels in Yemen, providing them with hundreds of millions of dollars and sophisticated military equipment. Additionally, Iran has developed new militia forces in Syria and Iraq, primarily drawn from non-Iranian citizens. We're concerned that these battle-hardened fighters could serve as an expeditionary force for Tehran, returning home or redeploying to other countries to carry out Tehran's commands. Beyond its military interventions, Iran remains the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. It continues to support a rogues gallery of terrorist organizations, including Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and others. Let me give you some numbers. Iran gives Hezbollah about $700 million a year. As for the Palestinian terrorist groups, it gives them potentially up to $100 million annually. Iran has also taken aim directly at the U.S. homeland. In 2011, senior commanders in the IRGC plotted to assassinate the Saudi ambassador at a restaurant in Georgetown. Fortunately, we disrupted the plot. If it had succeeded, dozens of innocent bystanders could have been killed or injured. Let me say a few more words about Hezbollah in particular. Hezbollah likes to tout its political role in social services in Lebanon. But the United States isn't fooled. we know Hezbollah for what it is, a terrorist group, indeed the most powerful and capable of Tehran's terrorist partners. It has perpetrated violence and destruction throughout Lebanon, throughout the region, and across the world. Thanks to Iran's backing, Hezbollah continues to expand its arsenal in Lebanon. It now has more than 100,000 rockets or missiles, and it's capable of hitting all of Israel with its weapons. This is a significant change from where things stood in 2006. It's also clear that despite the enormous costs of its military interventions in Syria and elsewhere, Hezbollah remains committed to global terrorism. Let me give you just a few examples from recent years. In 2012, Hezbollah bombed a bus in Burgas, Bulgaria, that killed 5 Israeli tourists and 1 Bulgarian citizen. It also undertook 2 separate plots in Cyprus in 2015. In recent years, Hezbollah operatives have been caught laying the groundwork for future attacks in places as far afield as Azerbaijan, Bolivia, Egypt, Peru, and Thailand. And Hezbollah weapons caches have been found in the far corners of the world, in the Gulf and Africa, among many other places. The United States isn't immune to this threat. In June of last year, the FBI arrested 2 alleged Hezbollah operatives in New York and Michigan, who we believe were surveilling U.S. government facilities in the homeland and in Latin America. These plots cost a lot of money, and the resources Hezbollah gets from the Iranian regime, remember that $700 million, it all comes out of the pocket of ordinary Iranians. We know what Tehran's priorities are. It's not boosting economic growth or driving down unemployment. It's not improving wages. It's terrorism and regional hegemony. The people of Iran deserve better than this. And as President Trump reaffirmed just last night, the United States stands with them in their hope and desire for a better future. While Iran and Hezbollah may have a longer geographical reach, Hamas continues to pose a significant threat. It's been more than 2 decades since the United States first designated Hezbollah as an FTO, a foreign terrorist organization under our law. Indeed, it was one of the first groups we put on our FTO list back in the 1990s. Now, this audience is all too familiar with Hamas's bloody history, but it's important to recall the details at a time when Hezbollah is trying to rebrand itself. Hamas has mercilessly targeted innocent civilians since its founding. In the 1990s, it carried out a deadly campaign of suicide bombings, killing almost 60 Israelis, as well as a number of Americans. Just a few years ago, in 2014, it kidnapped and murdered 3 Israeli teenagers, one of whom was also an American citizen. And in 2006, a Hamas member conducted a suicide attack on a bus in Jerusalem, killing 20 people. Hamas became even more ambitious in 2007 when it assumed control of Gaza and immediately intensified its terrorist campaign. Over the past decade, it has used its Gaza base to indiscriminately launch rockets into Israeli territory. In July of 2016, Hamas rockets hit a kindergarten in the southern Israeli town of Sderot. Fortunately, no one was killed, but that was due to bad aim, not because of Hamas's respect for young, innocent life. A few years ago, Hamas even erected a monument to its rockets in Gaza. There is no meaningful evidence that Hamas is willing to recognize Israel and abandon terrorism once and for all. Quite the contrary. Its new charter, released last year, remains committed to Israel's destruction, calling for a Palestinian state that stretches from the river to the sea. We all know what that means. Hamas is also working to improve its missile and rocket capabilities. It budgets tens of millions of dollars a year for its military efforts, and those efforts are paying off. Early last year, it reportedly developed a new short-range rocket with a much larger explosive payload. These new weapons could have a devastating impact if and when Hamas uses them against Israel, and no nation should have to live under that kind of threat. In addition, Hamas continues to divert aid coming into Gaza for its terrorist purposes. Construction material that could be used to rebuild homes is regularly seized to construct tunnels into Israel for use in kidnapping operations and other terrorist attacks. The bottom line here is that much like the Iranian regime, Hamas values terrorism more highly than the needs of the people it purportedly represents. Nor is Hamas the only bad actor in Gaza. A number of terrorist organizations are active there, including groups backed by Iran. Palestinian Islamic Jihad is among the most notorious of these Iranian proxies, but it's far from the only one. A dangerous new group has also emerged, Harakat al-Sabarin. Harakat was founded in 2014, and with support from Tehran, it has pursued an aggressive terrorist agenda ever since. The group has launched rockets into Israel, and it has previously built its own rocket facility that was previously destroyed. In early 2016, Harakat launched a plot against Israeli targets at Iranian direction and with Iranian funding. Fortunately, the Palestinian Authority disrupted the plot before it could come to fruition. So, up to this point, I've been painting a fairly bleak picture of the terrorist landscape and the threats that we face. Let me spend a few minutes telling you what we're doing about it. Countering Iran and its terrorist proxies and partners is a top priority for the Trump administration. We recently finalized a new comprehensive Iran strategy, and we've now begun to implement it. Our new approach marks a dramatic break from the past. We're no longer downplaying the threat of Iran-backed militancy, nor are we so focused on Iran's nuclear program that we're willing to overlook the regime's many other malign activities. Earlier today, you heard from my colleague, Ambassador David Satterfield, outline our Iran policy. The Trump administration is addressing the totality of the threat Iran poses and applying pressure to bring about a change in Tehran's behavior. Here are a few specifics. In October, we took a major step forward to hold Iran accountable when the Treasury Department designated the IRGC as a specially designated global terrorist, or SDGT, for its support to terrorism. We first designated the Quds Force back in 2007, and now we've designated the IRGC in its entirety. This new designation will hit them where it hurts the most, in the wallet. In addition to its terrorism and military adventurism, the IRGC has deeply penetrated the Iranian economy. That means that any legitimate business attempting to work in Iran is at risk of financing the IRGC, and by extension, giving it the resources it needs to fuel its aggression. We're making sure that companies everywhere understand this risk. The Trump administration will continue to use designations aggressively to pressure Iran and its proxies. Today, I'm announcing that the United States has designated Harakat al-Sabarin, the Iran-backed group in Gaza, as an SDGT. Attacking this group's funding isn't just good for security. It will also help keep the group from further destabilizing an already volatile situation in Gaza. While we're in the region, let me say a few words about the situation across the border in Egypt. Egypt is an important counterterrorism partner for the United States, and it's facing some serious and growing threats. In addition to a number of domestic terrorist organizations, there's an active ISIS branch in the Sinai. ISIS Sinai is one of the group's most sophisticated and lethal affiliates, targeting and killing Egyptian security forces on a near-daily basis. Last year, it conducted a horrific series of bombings against Coptic Christian churches in the Nile Valley and on a mosque in northern Sinai that killed over 300 people. And in 2015, it downed a Russian jetliner flying from Sharm el-Sheikh, killing 224 people. The United States has used our sanctions authorities to choke off the flow of money to ISIS Sinai. We designated the group as an FTO in 2016, and we designated its leader as an SDGT last year. More broadly, we're committed to helping our Egyptian partners build their capabilities to defeat the terrorist threats they face. That's why we're providing Cairo a range of security assistance that prioritizes counterterrorism, the Sinai, and border and maritime security. Today, the United States is designating two more groups in Egypt as SDGTs, Liwa al-Thura and Hazm. Each is a violent group that is splintered off from the Muslim Brotherhood. Liwa al-Thura has perpetrated a number of terrorist attacks against Egyptian government targets in recent years. In October 2016, the group assassinated a top Egyptian general outside his home in Cairo. And in the same year, it bombed a police center in the city of Tanta. Hazem was responsible for assassinating Egypt's chief prosecutor, killing a key officer in the National Security Agency, and the attempted murder of the former Grand Mufti. In addition, the Trump administration is ramping up our efforts against Hezbollah. We're using our law enforcement and financial tools to disrupt its networks, to target its financial resources, and squeeze it out of the international financial system. The U.S. has charged the 2 Hezbollah operatives arrested in June, and we've prosecuted a number of other people for Hezbollah-related crimes over the years. We've also designated more than 100 Hezbollah individuals and entities around the world under a range of legal authorities. We're also using our Rewards for Justice program, or RFJ, to increase pressure on Hezbollah. In October of last year, we announced 2 awards for information leading to the identification or location of 2 key Hezbollah figures: $7 million for Talal Hamia and $5 million for Fawad Shukr. Hamia is the head of the ESO, Hezbollah's international terrorism branch. Shukr is a senior military commander and a member of Hezbollah's Jihad Council. He also helped plan the 1983 bombing of the U.S. Marine Corps barracks in Beirut. Far more work, however, remains to be done. Hezbollah is not sanctioned by the UN, nor is it sanctioned regionally or at national levels in South America or in Africa or Southeast Asia, all areas where the group is quite active. And some countries have chosen to designate only Hezbollah's so-called military wing, embracing the fiction that its political activities can somehow be cordoned off from its terrorism. Of course, we all know that money is fungible. Every dollar given to a Hezbollah hospital frees up resources that can be used to buy rockets. And in any event, these gaps are not merely symbolic. They limit government's ability to freeze Hezbollah's assets, shut down its front companies, and prosecute its operatives. Pressing for greater international action against Hezbollah is one of our top diplomatic priorities, and we're already engaging our partners at high levels to deliver this important message. The bottom line here is that Hamas is vulnerable, that Hezbollah is vulnerable. The numerous plots disrupted over the last several years show that it can be thwarted through constant vigilance and close international coordination. Finally, we're increasing pressure on Hamas as well. Today, I'm announcing that we are designating a senior Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh, as an SDGT. Haniyeh is the president of Hamas's political bureau. He's also closely tied to the group's terrorist operations, including attacks on Israeli citizens. Haniyeh has been a member of Hamas since the 1980s, and he rose through the ranks in large part by continually championing terrorism against Israel. Haniyeh's calls for a renewed intifada just last month underscore how important today's designation is. We will not be distracted by Hamas's efforts to obscure its true and bloody nature. In conclusion, I'd like to say that counterterrorism is just one aspect, an important aspect, but one aspect of the broader U.S.-Israeli partnership. And it's a vital one that benefits us both. Both the American and the Israeli people are safer today because of the long-standing and deep counterterrorism cooperation between our countries. And that continued cooperation is essential as we move forward to defend our people, to defend our ways of life, and to improve our collective security. Thank you all.